Give it up for the worship band. Good job. I had to go to the bathroom before this, make sure I have a sticker on my back so I don't turn around and like a football or a tennis ball or something. Let me get to my notes here. How's everyone doing tonight? Doing good? Good. Yeah. See, Matt got it. Who had like double-digit stickers? Anybody get overwhelmed? Ava? Yeah. I know Tom had a lot. Every time he came back, he's like, I got another sticker. I don't know what's going on. My name's Ty. Speaking tonight, obviously, that's why I'm up here. They're all in a meeting. We hope that you all have enjoyed this series that's not a series on Riley speaking about whatever he wants to speak about, you know? And this week it's my turn. So we're going to get right into it because we kind of have a lot to go through, and we're trying to keep you guys for too long. How many in here like a good haunted trail or a haunted house, like around Halloween? Show of hands. Raise them high. Let me see you. Yeah, okay. A lot of people in here like them. So me and my friends, we have this sort of tradition that we've done since about the 8th grade where we would go to these, at least once a year, and we would never go to the same one twice. And it was like our mission to find the scariest one, like the most intense one, right? And that was our goal. And about 6 years ago, we did it. Okay, it was hosted by the Cat FM radio station, and so hopes weren't too high because it was hosted by the Cat FM radio station. And we show up, and there's hundreds of people here, right? And so we're like, okay, it's a big deal. You know, there's a lot of people coming around, showing up. We go up, there's this small little booth, this little old lady. She's sitting there, and I walk up, and I said, hey, I'd like to, buy a ticket for this. And she goes, okay, would you like to pay for the Haunted Plus experience? And I said, what's that? And she goes, well, sweetheart. And she grabs this bright yellow vest and slaps it down in front of me. And she says, you will wear this vest, and that will show all of our workers in the trail that they can touch you and grab you. And I was like, touch me and grab me? Well, it's like, what is that, And so I said, well, what does that mean? And she goes, well, you see, there's cages in the woods, like off of the trail. And they'll try to grab you and throw you in the cages and separate you from the group. And you have to do the rest of the trail on your own. And this is like a long trail. It's supposed to take like 2 hours to get through. Right? So I'm like, oh, man, that's pretty intense. How much? She's like, $5 extra. I said, oh, okay, yeah, sure. So give her $5. Turn around. I'm like, hey, everyone, make sure you grab your vest. Okay, so we all have our vests, we get in line, we're waiting, they give us a wristband before we go in because there's a checkpoint halfway through the race, or the trail, halfway through, and you had to check it. There were like drinks and snacks and music and all this stuff going on, and it was to make sure nobody snuck onto their little trail. And they were like about halfway, it's about 3/4 of a mile down, a long trail. We're like, okay, we get in line, we notice nobody else has a vest. No one. We're the only ones. This wasn't on their website, and we're thinking, we just gave them permission to kidnap us. Like, we paid them money to do this. And so we start going through the trail, and the very first part wasn't that intense. It wasn't that scary or anything, and they just came up, and they would, like, stroke your cheek and stuff. And I'm like, I just wasted money on this. Are you kidding me? Not only do I have this goofy vest on, but I'm just getting touched by strangers. And then we come around this corner, and it kind of opened up, and we look, and we could see the cages. And we're like, oh, look, there they are. There's all those cages. I bet that's where they throw you. And right when we said that, like 7 or 8 dudes jump out of the woods and attacked us just straight on. It's a wrestling match between me and my friends and these complete strangers. And we're like, we have to try. They're actually fighting us. And we were like, what is this? So we won. We break away, and we start running, okay? And we get to a line, and there's about 30 or 40 people in this line, and there's this little barn, and they're sending people in one at a time. And that's like where you had to get, yeah, that's what we said. And we had to it was to separate us, right? And we're like, uh-oh, this is going to stink, because we have they can just grab us, and we just got mugged. And so we thought, so we're like game planning, how are we gonna get through this? Let's just sprint through the barn. Like, who cares about immersion? Like, let's just sprint so we don't get separated. And we're sitting there talking, about 30 or 40 people, and at the front of the line, a guy jumps out of the bush. Big old, like, beefy boy, right? Jumps out, he's just like a monster. He's got this chainsaw. He starts screaming and starts running down the line. And we're like, we look at each other, and we look down at each other's vest, and we look back up at each other like, uh-oh, what does this mean for us? And what is the universal rule when there's a chainsaw in a haunted trail or haunted house? What do? You run, exactly, right? So what do? We run. And we start running, and he cuts through the line of people, because everyone's like, haha, they've got the vest, like, sucks for them. And so we're running. He cuts in front of the guy behind me. His name was Preston. So now it's just me and this chainsaw guy.
You're with Preston Place?
Not Preston Place, different Preston. And so I take off through the barn, right? And what does he do? What do I hear behind me? He's right behind me, and he's waving his chainsaw, and he's like screaming at me and mocking me, and he's like, I'm gonna get you. And I'm like yelling things back at him, and we're running through the woods, and it's dark, and I'm like, I'm separated from my friends. Like, I don't know where they're at. They're gone. Like, this is it. He's gonna catch me. He's gonna throw me in a cage, and that's it. I'm off to Eastern Europe, like, who knows? And I'm running, and it's like endless. Asher gets that reference. It's like an endless run. Like, it was like the longest thing. And I just remember knowing, I got to find the checkpoint. I got to get there. If I can get there, I'm safe. I'm fine. At one point, there was this trail, and this little girl dressed as like Chucky or something, she jumped up. She thought I was just like some lone wolf running. She jumps out. She's like, ha, boo. And I just, bam. 2-0 on this. 2-0. Equal rights, equal fights. Y'all get it, it's fine. Listen. Shh. So we're running, and he's still screaming at me, and he's still just right behind me. He's just yelling. I mean, he is right there. And all of a sudden, I could see the lights of the checkpoint. And I was like, there it is. I could see all the people. I could see all of the drinks, like the hot chocolate and waters and the chips and the snacks. I could hear the music. They were playing Garth Brooks. I'd never been more excited to hear country music in my life. And I remember thinking, if I can just get to the checkpoint, I'll be safe, right? And this was like the longest run ever. And if we're honest with ourselves, I would be willing to bet that some of you tonight have a monster chasing them. And it's right behind you. And it's looming, and it's been mocking you for a long time. And you can't seem to get away. That's my niece. Whether that's an addiction that you can't seem to shake, whether that's depression that seems to loom over you and follow you and keep you up at night, whether that's bitterness, or maybe it's the regret and shame of some bad choices you've made in life, and now your reputation is soiled because of them, and you're just the guy who's a pig, or the girl who won't say no, or you're the friend who will backstab and betray the moment anybody dares to get close to you. And tonight we're going to talk about our checkpoint, about our safe place, right? A place of refuge and rescue. It'll be on the screen above me. Our verse for the night, our verse is Matthew chapter 9, verses 18 through 22. It says this: While he was saying these things to them, behold, a ruler came in and knelt before him, saying, My daughter has just died, but come and lay your hand on her, and she will live. And Jesus rose and followed him with his disciples. And behold, a woman who had suffered from an issue of bleeding for 12 years came up behind him and touched the edge of his garment. For she said to herself, If I can only touch his garment, I will be healed. Jesus turned and seeing her, said, "Have courage, daughter. Your faith has made you well." And instantly, the woman was made well. Everyone say, "Have courage." So a little bit of context for this story. So why there's a crowd right there. Okay, so Jesus is at Matthew's house. They're having dinner, hanging out, and people would just follow them around. Okay, they wanted to see what Jesus was doing because he's performing these miracles. They wanted to hear what he was going to say because he was saying all these like controversial things and these crazy things that no one's saying. So people just follow him because they wanted to be a part. They wanted to see it, right? They wanted to be there. And so this big crowd gathered around. And he's having some conversation with some Pharisees and other people. And it says this leader walks in. That leader's name is Jairus. He's a leader of a synagogue, which would be like the head pastor of a church, okay? And he kneels down. He's like, "Hey, my daughter's she's dead. If you'll come and just lay your hand on her, like she'll live." And Jesus agrees. So they get up and they follow him and they start going through town. Now this is a big deal, okay? Like Jesus is about to raise this dude's daughter from the dead. So they're making their way through town, and anybody who's not a part of the crowd, they're calling out, and they're like, "Hey, yo, Asher, Jesus is about to raise his daughter from the dead. You got to come see this." And Asher's like, "Oh yeah, for sure." And then Asher starts coming around. And he's like, "Hey, yo, Maddox, Jesus is about to raise this guy's daughter from the dead. You got to come be a part of this." And so people are gathering, and the crowd is growing, and there's noise is being created. It's becoming chaotic, and they're passing through the town on the way to this daughter. And that is when we're interrupted by this woman and her issue. And we're not given any details about her other than she had an issue of bleeding, and it was for 12 years. And if you don't know what the issue of bleeding is, that is like how a woman goes on their monthly period. She was having her period for 12 years and it wasn't stopping. And she went to doctors for help. She spent all of her money, and her situation only kept getting worse, okay? She was seen as unclean by society. Like she couldn't go to the temple and offer a sacrifice or give an offering. She couldn't go to the market and buy groceries or food. She had to go to like these lower places of society that were also unclean, because anything she touched was unclean. And then if you touched anything she touched, you were unclean. And then if anybody touched anything you touched, they're unclean. You see this vicious cycle? And so you had to go through this process of cleansing. And she was unclean, and it wasn't getting better. So society had cast her out. And she was like this for 12 years, just living like in the slums of her town. Nobody would touch her. Nobody would come near her. She was just seen as unclean. And the Pharisees would do this often. They would cast people out, and they would use the law in the Old Testament as a way to separate and isolate people from God. And they're like, "Yeah, we know about your mess, about your problem. You can't be a part of this. We know about your reputation. We know about the things you've done. You can't be a part of this. You're not welcome here. You're too messy. You're too unclean. I won't touch you. You need to just stay an outcast." And that's what the Pharisees would do. And Jesus came to show us that God desires to draw near to the unclean and to make us whole. And so here she is in her little like hidey hole in this town, and she like this problem is looming, right? She's sitting there, she's broken, she's helpless. She's had this issue forever, like this monster chasing her through the woods. And then she hears that Jesus is coming through town on his way to raise this girl from the dead. She thinks to herself, "Jesus, I've heard about him. If he could raise a girl from the dead, I wonder what he could do for me. Oh, I heard he healed a blind man. I even heard rumors that he healed a leper. I wonder if he'd be afraid to touch me. Just last week, he healed that paralytic man whose friends lowered him through the roof. Oh, but I don't have friends that would do something like that for me. I've been so alone for so long. And plus, look at that crowd. It's just, there's so much happening. There's so much noise and chaos. There's no way I'd make it there." And then she starts to muster up some courage and some faith, and she's saying, no, I have to at least try. Jesus, I can't let this moment pass. She goes, I know what I'll do. I'll crawl through the crowd. I'll keep my head down so that no one sees me, no one knows it's me, and I'll just touch his garment. I won't touch him and make him unclean. He could have me stoned and killed for something like that. But I know if I can just touch the edge of his garment, I will be healed. And so she does. In her faith, it takes action. And she begins to crawl through the crowd. And she reaches out and she touches the very edge. And Jesus noticed. It says he turns and he looks at her. There she is lying in the dirt, scared, terrified. She's just been caught. She's been unclean, not allowed to be close to the better part of society for as long as she can remember. And there stands before her the King of Kings. The band can make their way up. And she's broken, she's scared, she's thinking, man, this is it. Jesus is gonna look at me, he's gonna condemn me, he's gonna cast me out, and I'll be lost forever. But he doesn't do that. He looks at her, he says, have courage, daughter. Your faith has made you well. And we're told that she was healed instantly. So what's your monster tonight? Think about it. What seems to constantly chase you, no matter what you do, you can't seem to get away from it. You can stand with me tonight. That could be an addiction, something you've tried to break free from. You just can't seem to get away. No matter how hard you try, you find yourself bound up in its mess all over again.